Ho Center was founded in 2016 at the University of Toronto, and I was the first director in 2016 when it was founded as a center downtown. The director for the Center of Buddhist Studies is responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the center. The director sets the sort of programming tone and direction for the year of programming. It's a center that kind of brings together all of the Buddhist Studies faculty and graduate students and undergrads even in the university across all three campuses to do events and programming that are both focused on research for faculty and grad students, but also on public outreach and interaction with public communities, both locally in Toronto and internationally. The director makes sure that some of the events are for the public and some are for grad students and faculty, and that we have an even balance of focus on research, teaching, and public outreach. I think there are a lot of people interested in Buddhism, both at the university as researchers or students, but also in the public. So we have to think about how to reach people and who our different audiences are. And so one of the first things I did as director was make a website, of course, and I send out regular newsletters. We also have a Twitter account and a YouTube channel. Our YouTube videos now reach like 10,000 people or so. So as a team, I guess at the Ho Center, we've worked pretty hard on getting our message out to various people through different kind of social media, email, website, and so forth. A lot of our events take place during the academic year because most of our audiences are students or faculty, grad students, undergraduates. And I guess I would say that that has kind of changed in the time of COVID because since the pandemic started, we haven't had any live events. So we've started a number of special initiatives during COVID that are especially aimed at mentorship for grad students, distance, like online language learning, and also supporting students and faculty well-being, I guess, basically, during this very stressful period of our lives. And so, for example, we started the series Conversations About Reading Tibetan, which is an online series where we pair a student of Tibetan language with an expert translator or Tibetan scholar. So it's been kind of neat to see actually during COVID that we can in fact reach people all around the world. We can tell from the statistics that we have a lot of viewers in Asia and Europe and North America. Another series we've done during COVID is called How Do You Do It, which is a series where I've asked scholars in Buddhist studies to kind of reveal what's behind the scenes as a scholar of Buddhist studies. We have a pretty modest staff at the Center for Buddhist Studies. We had a fantastic administrative assistant in our first year named Chris Pugh, who really helped us set up the administrative infrastructure for the center. It's really important to have a good administrative team to kind of keep that all in order. And more recently, we've had Dr. Betsy Moss join us in the last few years. Betsy has been really instrumental, especially in not only those kind of administrative details, but she's been a real leader in our podcast series. Our podcast is called The Circled Square, Higher Education in Buddhist Studies. And for that series, Betsy has really done a lot of research and applied a lot of her own kind of intellectual strengths and technical skills to helping us think about how to produce a podcast in a way that reaches an appropriate audience and that is really well sculpted and kind of thought through carefully. The host for that podcast is Dr. Sarah Richardson, and she's also the Director of Partnerships and Engagement at the Center for Buddhist Studies. She's an art historian of Buddhist art. And Sarah is the host of the Circled Square podcast, and she interviews for that podcast scholars in Buddhist studies who teach at anywhere from colleges to research universities who teach really diverse audiences. And she focuses especially on kind of new approaches to teaching and new subject matter in the study of Buddhism in response to emerging trends in the field of Buddhist studies. As far as the culture of the center, we've tried to focus really strongly not only on supporting scholarship and academic training in Buddhist studies through research support, academic conferences, and talks and library collections development. Those things are all kind of the bedrock of Buddhist studies for sure. But we've also tried to support a community, especially with grad students and among graduate students and undergraduates, where collaboration is more important than competition. And so a lot of graduate students have been involved in our programs as research partners. And we've also then partnered with members of the community in Toronto and internationally, so experts in Buddhist dance, or experts in different Buddhist languages, or experts in other ritual performance. And those people have been research partners with us. So for example, we've hosted a number of Tibetan Buddhist rituals on campus where the Tibetan experts, the monks usually who are performing these rituals, then also give talks with a scholar and the ritualist kind of talking about the event. Or we did a food-related event where we had members of the Newar Buddhist community come to a community kitchen at the University of Toronto Scarborough and cook a meal together with members of the public, and then talk about the kind of cultural and religious events that go along with food and eating together in their Buddhist community. Yeah, so in our role of kind of a research institution in the middle of a very large city with a diverse community, one of our main priorities has been to kind of respond to events that are happening in Buddhist communities locally, but then also globally. And so, for example, when the political situation started to change in Myanmar, we called in quickly a group of scholars and experts to talk about in a public forum what was happening. Or, for example, when a series of scandals started to emerge in Buddhist communities, sexual abuse scandals and other kinds of abuse scandals, we called in a couple of scholars to come and talk to us from a kind of historical perspective and a sort of cultural analysis perspective on these events that were occurring in Buddhist communities. And both of those are kind of just two examples of how we've tried to respond quickly to events that are happening globally or locally in Buddhist or Buddhist studies communities. We're also then responding to Buddhist studies movements toward anti-racist work and decolonization work. And so, for example, that takes place not only by sort of shifting some of our teaching priorities, but also our research and public programming priorities to emphasize education on the kind of white supremacist or racist history of our field of Buddhist studies, and how that plays out in the everyday ways that many of us do teach and do research in the field. But then also, of course, how we can sort of start to shift our research and teaching toward more decolonial approaches, so taking new approaches to teaching different kinds of subject matter in Buddhist studies, or to thinking about different Buddhist communities as our collaborators rather than our informants. And that involves a lot of work. And so that's been an increasing priority, both education, but then shifting our modes of practice at the Ho Center. I think as looking forward, I think it will be really important for the center to continue to support graduate students in language training in less commonly taught languages especially. But I also think that it'll be important for the center to respond to the changing nature of of university education in the time of the pandemic, and as I can't say the end of the pandemic now, but as the future brings changes to higher education, I think we need to think about what that means. And what are some of the opportunities that the pandemic might have brought us? For example, the great expansion in online teaching and accessibility to higher education that was necessitated by moving our teaching and programming online. Much of that we should kind of continue, I think, because we were able to reach such a large audience, and we were able to include the voices of all kinds of people in our programs in the last year and a half that previously couldn't have participated. So one of the big changes that the pandemic has brought to us at the Center for Buddhist Studies is a shift toward programming that really focuses on physical and mental health, and a sense and support for well-being for our community. As we saw people really struggling, graduate students, faculty, undergraduates in our local community, we really started to think about how we could support them, and that's led to, we had a program, before the pandemic started, we had this program called Engaging Education in Buddhist Studies that was established in 2019 with support from the Kensei Foundation as well as the Ho Center. And for that, we proposed at the time to create these modules that could be inserted into Buddhist Studies courses that are grounded in research on the benefits of experiential education on well-being, student well-being. And so our work for that project was to create these modules in Buddhist Studies courses specifically that would help make classroom work more accessible to all members of the classroom, to amplify diverse voices in the classroom, and to support overall wellness among students. And so as the pandemic kind of moved all of our teaching and programming online, we then shifted that project online, and we've been working now with a growing group of academics, social workers, psychologists, Buddhist Studies professors and a team of Buddhist Studies students at the University of Toronto to produce some not only classroom modules to insert into our courses, but also additional extracurricular materials that kind of help us see how research in Buddhist studies and in topics related to Buddhist studies can sort of help shift and support initiatives that are shaped by like trauma-informed pedagogy and active learning, place-responsive pedagogy, so some of these other movements. So we're trying to kind of, in an interdisciplinary way, join all of these approaches to really address the needs of students and community members in today's very challenging environment. A lot of this work is also then tied to human relationships with the environment, and so we're thinking as well about how Buddhist studies can react to climate disaster, climate change, and how much of our efforts to work with student well-being are also about kind of understanding and thinking about climate change and our relationship to the environment. And so that's been a big priority of my own scholarship and teaching, but it's also something that the Ho Center has worked on, especially through our Engaging Education in Buddhist Studies initiative. I think the gift from the Ho family to the University of Toronto and the founding of the center, and what we've been able to do in the last 5 years, has really been significant for local communities, like for our own students and for people who've come to our programs, you know, locally in Toronto. But also I think we've been able to have an impact on the field of Buddhist studies, especially in the last couple years, through things like our podcast and our many video series and our many online programs that we've done as a result of the pandemic largely. And so we've been able to really develop a following of many thousands of people around the world who are kind of now able to see the results of the research that's taking place at the University of Toronto at the Ho Center and participate in a really meaningful way in that research. And you know, if we didn't have the Center for Buddhist Studies, thanks to the Ho family, we wouldn't be able to reach all of those people and have that kind of impact on the global community.
Shagyamunai Soha